So my name is Caryn, and I'm going to be talking about UX, but first, I just want to say, I'm like very short behind this, so I'm really sorry if you can't see my beautiful face. Big shout out to the organizers of this event. I've been coming to Erie since the very first one, and this is amazing to see. I love seeing this much attendance, and the organizers do an awesome job, so thank you very much. You guys crush it every year. It's awesome. I've been an attendee and a speaker, and you guys are always doing such a good job. So to all the volunteers and the organizers and everything, and to Erie Museum, like, always a good job. So thank you. So I am a UX designer / like all the UX-y things. I'm also sort of a static designer, front-end developer, and a myriad of other things at Vehicle. This series is pretty specific outside of Vehicle. I haven't actually done any of the content for this yet publicly, so you are the first people who get to hear it, which is pretty fun. I'm very busy teaching a lot of the time when I'm not actually doing any software work. So this to me is a lot of fun, so I hope you enjoy it as well. And I will try to go through this pretty quickly because I know we have lunch coming up, and I'll try to make this fun for you as well. If you have any issues reading anything, you can come up and ask for the link for the slides afterwards, and I will send it to you because it is a lot of fun. And I am Lainey Carney on Twitter, where we can chat about more of these things. So, practical UX, the structure of what I want to talk about is how to actually apply UX principles in what you do every single day, instead of it being a mysterious, terrifying concept that is unapproachable. And if you're wondering whether or not this is for you, it absolutely is. I'm going to break this down so that everyone can actually apply some of these things all the time in everything that you're building, whether it's software or wherever you happen to be building things. But first, I do want to address the entire UX UI concept, the UX / UI. And the way that I want to talk about that is with this fun poster. It's a little bit difficult to see. I do have a laser pointer, which is fun. This little piece is UI. This whole piece here, this is UX. UX is the entire discipline of a bunch of different skills. Like, there's a ton of different things involved with UX, and UI is one little piece. Essentially, UI is the visual side, and UX is the entire umbrella of things. So don't worry, I'm not going to teach you how to be designers. I know that's very terrifying. What we're actually going to be talking about are the applicable skills under the umbrella that you can apply. So breaking down UX, user experience. It sounds sexy, it sounds mysterious, it isn't. User experience. Who is the user? What problem do they have? What is the experience they want to have? UX shouldn't be mysterious, and diving into what that actually means should help alleviate some of the fear of talking about UX or saying that you're familiar with UX or applying UX principles. UX sounds terrifying, and I swear it's just because it has an X in it. It isn't. It's super applicable and approachable. By the nature of it, it should be something that all of us can use because you are all users. Whether it's from the front end of an app and actually clicking through something, writing the code, you are all users. So you are already using UX. You just might not be using it right. So, how many people here are building apps or sites or whatever? Keeping your hands up, how many of you are building things for people? Trick question, everyone is. Unless you're building something for machines, but that's like a whole other thing, and they probably don't care about user experience. Awesome. So, what we're going to talk about in context is this app called Strava. Is anyone using Strava? Probably a few, because they have a ton of users. Strava, for anyone who doesn't know, is a running and cycling app. That's all it is. It basically turns your phone into like a really bitchin' computer for like keeping track of running and stuff like that. So with Strava in mind, we're going to go through a couple different principles, and then we'll see how Strava has actually used some of these in context. So to think about the U side of UX, you have a user. The user is anybody who's going to interact with your app, whether it is the intended customer, whether it is another person on your team, it is the person who's going to use your app. So how many people are building for people, or how many people are building apps for people? So just shout out an answer here. Who's your user? Anybody? More specific.
Physicians.
Okay, perfect. You, for your participation, get a poster. That's right, there's prizes for participation. Awesome. So for you, how did you find out who your users were? How did you know they were physicians?
When the stakeholders who wanted to build a product explained what they were trying to do, who they were trying to help.
Okay, did you ask or did they tell you?
I might have asked a generic question like, what are we doing here?
Perfect. How many people have ever asked that question? What are we doing here? Good. Yay, you're almost UX people. Perfect. So for Strava, they discovered a niche that they wanted to make an app for. Their users are runners and cyclists. They are people who have GPS-enabled phones. They are interested in tracking the progress that they have. They're pretty competitive because they're athletes and that sort of thing. So if you're someone who's working on the Strava team and this comes to you and there's this niche that your stakeholders have said that we are going to make an app for these people, what are some questions that you would ask about these users?
How are they going to use it?
Pardon?
How?
Perfect, okay. You get a poster. Yay! So you could ask, what type of GPS devices do they have now? You could ask, do they need to buy something in order to use this app? You could ask, does this need to integrate with fitness trackers? Do they have Fitbits? Are they using Polars? You could ask any number of questions to sort of fill out the information that you need in order to build the app appropriately for those users. When you're done figuring out who the user is, the next most important thing about UX, right after users, is what the problem is. To build the solution appropriately, you need to know what the problem is. The problem is not runners need an app. That's not a problem. They don't need an app. They have tons of apps. They have all sorts of more like pen on paper ways. They could walk in their house and just write it on a whiteboard. They don't need an app at all. The problem is something different it's something different other than just they need a thing. So they would ask what you would ask to figure out what the problem is. What are people doing now instead of using this app? What are they doing currently and why is this a problem? And what is our idea to do this better? And how can we convince those people that they should use it? That's framing a problem appropriately for actually building a good solution. So for Strava, the users were currently they were using competing apps or no apps at all. And Strava was framing themselves as if they would be better by offering features that were actually useful. So there's no fluff. There's no like additional little things like making it busy. I mean, you're like on your bike. You don't need a bunch of other crap on your app, right? They had fitness trackers that they wanted to be able to use, and they wanted to build a community of people so that you could have commenting and kudos and those sorts of things. And why anybody would go over to Strava would be, well, we can have people creating custom routes, cool trails that are pretty to run on. We could have competitions with yourself, with other people. We could have features like, here's what top Olympic athletes are doing and how you can compete with them or how you rank up next to them. Tons of different ideas to draw people in. So for the person who's on the Strava team, you have the problem, you have the users. How would you figure that you would find out what the problems actually are? What questions might you ask?
What do you wish you would have?
That actually is a very good question. Definitely a poster. So the answer was, what do you wish you could have? An interesting way of asking that question, and it actually does get a lot of really good responses that are very valuable, is You have a user and you say to them, if I gave you a magic wand and you could have anything you ever wanted in this app, what would you have? It sounds silly because they might come off in some like insane direction being like, I wish it would make me dinner. But there are tons of answers that you actually will get that are quite valuable. Without any holds barred, don't worry about internet connection or the phone you actually have. If you had a magic wand, what would you have? The answers you're going to get are actually going to be pretty valuable if you ask a question that broadly. So once you have those answers, how do you communicate those things? You tell a story. That story can be told in any number of ways, but hopefully it's visual. I'm sure a lot of you have been around wireframes or user flows, some visual way of communicating who the user is, what the problem is, and how we're going to solve that problem. Telling the story of being able to communicate basically the essentials of how that all makes sense and how it all works together is the most important thing that you can wrap all of that up in. You have to be able to communicate it effectively. So you need to be able to share the ideas and also the plan. So for Strava, this is actually a photo of this guy, Tommy, who was doing card sorting for Strava. Card sorting is very good for figuring out navigation, where things need to live, all of that fun stuff, priority order. But it's a physical means and it's cheap. So you have pieces of paper and you literally shuffle them around on a table or whatever the case may be. This can also be done with user flows. I'm sure some of you have been around Post-its on a wall and each Post-it represents a view and you rearrange them. Very cheap way of figuring out how your app should lay out or a flow through something. So for some of you who've been around this or who have seen it online or whatever, what are some of the ways that you have experienced a really good way of having something communicated to you in one of these means? Anybody? Post-its, whiteboards. Has anyone seen anything cool?
We actually, when we did ours, we used a combination of Post-its, whiteboards, and they have those big sheets that are actually posted.
Yes.
So we would do it on a whiteboard, and then the Post-its would be the different steps maybe, and then you could rearrange them and be able to draw lines on the whiteboard to connect them. And when you got what you wanted, you transfer it over to one of the big poster boards that you could then save and be able to rehang on the wall later, and then we'd go on to a new whiteboard.
Perfect. How many times did you rearrange it? More than once?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And how many times would you have had to do, or what would the cost have been if you had done that in code? It would have been massive.
It would have cost us months of extra
Absolutely.
coding, yeah.
Definitely a poster. That's a great example. How many people have been around these types of scenarios where you are actually in the room and you get to see these things communicated to you in some visual way? Good, that's awesome. How many people have themselves actually participated in one of these workshops? Excellent. How many people think they could actually lead one? Good. I think all of you could. They're just Post-its. You just rearrange stuff on a wall. It's super easy. Everyone gets posters. So the result, did it work for Strava? Did figuring out the user, did figuring out the problem, was it effective? Did it work? Well, so they built a bunch of features that were absolutely useful. They ditched a bunch of features that didn't work. They have complete support of damn near every fitness tracking device that's out there. It's amazing. And the last numbers that they actually reported, they have 136 million runs uploaded into the app, 627,000 plus marathons, 2.3 million kudos. So people just being like, you did a run. 110 million comments. Did it work? It sounds like it worked. So, what are the essential takeaways here? Ask questions. Who is the user you're building the thing for? What problems do they actually have? And really ask those questions honestly and listen to the answers. Maybe the direction that you're going and the ideas that you have aren't necessarily in alignment with what the actual problem is. And continue to ask yourself that question throughout building whatever it is that you're building. Sometimes you can end off in a little bit of a weird direction. Remind yourself of these answers often when you're building something. And then communicate those things. Whether it's with notes or on a whiteboard or with Post-its, it doesn't matter. But communicate them so that those ideas are shared by everyone. And that's it. That's UX.